So I made a big video showing all sorts of unique crosshairs in Marvel Rivals for every single hero. But the question is, do crosshairs even make you aim better? The answer is simple. No, but actually yes. We'll get into the but actually yes part later. Let's explain first why crosshairs may not really benefit you much at all, and go over some common sort of tropes when it comes to messing around with your crosshair and your settings that may actually be slowing down your progress and improvement as a player. Now, I must say that the crosshairs that I've designed specifically will help, and they personally help me a lot, but they're not going to make you a better player. And I think most people will realize that and understand that already. But let's break down why crosshairs may not help you, and thinking about crosshairs too much may make you play worse. And then later in the video, I'll also explain how crosshairs in this game can specifically help, and where to take advantage of them, and where not to think about it too much. So first, let's talk about why crosshairs may not really help your aim at all. Firstly, one of the biggest mistakes most players new to shooter games make is you should not be focusing on your crosshair. You should be focusing on the enemies. Your actual eyesight should be focusing the enemies themselves. It's easier to target those and understand the moment they go into your crosshair, you'll shoot, as opposed to trying to focus on your crosshair and then move your aim around to try and track the targets. This is a very simple aim practice 101 tip. And everybody knows it at this point. I think most players understand that focusing on the enemies is better than focusing on your crosshair. Your crosshair never moves. You're always going to know where it is, but the enemies are moving all over the place. So it's better to put all of your focus on that. But more about why later. Even though you're focusing on the enemies, that doesn't necessarily mean the crosshair isn't in your vision. And I'll talk about that more later. And I think there's a bit of a misconception there. And I do think that even having different crosshair styles and designs in a variety of different games can help, so long as you are aware of the fact that that's not where your focus should be. Another thing that I think is a real big sort of question on a lot of people's minds is, should I spend the time messing around with my settings, changing my sensitivity, and changing my crosshair styles? The answer usually is no. If you've already got settings that are set up and you've been using them for a while, most likely they're going to be good enough to carry you to the highest ranks. The only thing that really matters is improving your own game sense, mechanics, and overall player skill. Changing settings does not do much at all, and you're not going to get a free, easy ride to the higher ranks by getting better crosshairs, changing your sensitivity, or doing any other weird stuff with your settings. That is obviously something that a lot of people try and lean into because they're trying to hopefully get a tiny bit of extra skill out of their performance. Now, the best thing to do if you want to improve and you don't know what to do and you're trying to find a solution is just go to your match history and look at your games and click on the highlights for where you died and watch those moments back. Watch those moments back from the enemy's POV. This tool is so amazing. Crosshairs will not make you better as a player, but dying will make you better as a player. Sounds strange, but if you watch back your deaths from the enemy's perspective, every time you die, it's an extra little bit of information about how you can play better and how you can improve. And honestly, this is probably the best way you can learn as a player. And the tools that they have in Marvel Rivals specifically are absolutely amazing. So, yes, I think in a traditional sense, crosshairs, changing them around won't make you play better. They're not going to improve your game or anything like that. But that does not mean crosshairs don't provide useful tools and information to help you play and just feel a little bit less frustrated whilst playing. I think that it's important to reiterate, yes, crosshairs aren't going to suddenly make you better at the game, but they are going to provide a lot of value in certain situations. And firstly, let's talk about the whole, well, you shouldn't be messing around with your crosshair because you're not looking at that. You need to look at the enemies. Yes, focus on the enemies, absolutely. But that doesn't mean you can't see the crosshair design in your vision. You're still going to process that information and understand it, even if you're not putting your eyes straight in the center of the screen. It is still something that you're going to be very aware of, and it's certainly going to help you. Now, the second thing is, Marvel Rivals is not a traditional shooter game. We've seen lots of different hero shooters before, but the reason why crosshairs work really well in Marvel Rivals is there's a variety of abilities and weapons that have different travel times, different mechanics, and overall, that is really hard to gauge across multiple different characters, especially if you haven't had enough time to play all of the different characters, and then suddenly someone's like, right, you need to play Rocket Raccoon because I want the team up, and you're like, okay, I'll do it, and then you suddenly just can't hit any shots, and it's because his aim, his bullets always trail slightly behind where you're aiming. So in that case, a crosshair actually provides you the information you need to understand where you're aiming. It doesn't mean you need to focus on that exact part of the crosshair to be better, but just having that information in front of you is like a constant reminder of what you need to know about each of the individual abilities. The same could be said for Hawkeye's crosshair that I've designed. This almost transparent circle will tell you the range you need to aim in to be able to charge up the charged shot. Now, if you're a veteran Hawkeye player, you're going to know this already. But if you're new to Hawkeye, having this as a sort of guideline is just going to provide you a bit of a smoother experience getting used to his abilities. And if you don't have this, sometimes you can be wondering a little bit why you're not charging up shots when you feel like you should be. Once again, you're not going to be focusing on this information, but it's there subtly in the background just to provide you a little bit more focus and guidelines to be able to play the player better. Same with Black Panther's crosshair that I've designed. Sometimes understanding where the spear is going to fly can be a little bit difficult, so having this indicator to know that no matter what distance you are, it's always going to hit regardless of the fact of the distance between you and your enemy, then that's a really nice tool. Like, once again, you're not going to be focusing on this element, but having that little bit there just gives you a bit more guidelines when you're switching between characters. And speaking of switching between characters, another massive benefit of having different crosshairs in Marvel Rivals is that if you swap between characters mid-match, you may be warmed up on your aim with, say, Star-Lord, who has a bit of spread, but then you suddenly go to, say, Hela, or something like that, who's a hit scan character, and whilst you may not have bad aim with Hela, going from Star-Lord to suddenly playing Hela mid-match can be a bit of a jarring experience, especially for your aim. So for me, having visual indicators to remind myself, oh, I need to play like this with my aim now, really massively helps. So having an individual crosshair for every character, even if it doesn't have any extra features, is honestly a nice way just to remind yourself how to specifically aim and play with that character. One of the biggest aiming tips I've had over the years of playing shooters, and I've been playing shooters for decades at this point, is that sometimes your aim is amazing and then you play for longer hours and it just starts to fall off and get really bad. One of the best things to do is do something to wake up your brain so that you're once again consciously focusing on your aim instead of it being more of a subconscious thing. And one of the best things to do is just change up something on your screen. Change your crosshair color. Change your skin on your character if you're playing a first-person shooter game. I do that a lot in Apex Legends. Something to just change the scene. It will suddenly wake your brain up. And I feel like having individual crosshairs can be a really good way to do that. So yes, crosshairs are not going to improve your aim. They are not going to make you have better performance. They're not going to suddenly make you a better player. But custom crosshairs in Marvel Rivals will provide you a little bit of extra information and tools that you can take advantage of to just sort of smoothen out the experience going from character to character. And that's what the benefit is. It's never going to be about having better aim or suddenly improving as a player. There are other ways to do that that are far more effective, but that doesn't mean crosshairs are useless.